Welcome. These will be my thoughts on Wonder Man Season 1, Episode 6, Callback. They got a callback. The episode is rated TV-14, so this video there will be spoilers for these first 6 episodes, not for the last 2, I think, are left. I haven't watched those yet, and potentially, hypothetically, we'll see the MCU leading up to the first episode of this. And yeah, I continue to absolutely love this show. And I am so glad that Zlatko Buric is still working. It's so wild to think, there's a lot of his stuff that I haven't watched. I gotta get around to, but, some of the oldest... Yeah, I think the oldest thing I've seen him in is 30 years old. Isn't that when the first Pusher came out? Something, right, my wrists are too sore to look it up right now, but somewhere around that, so, yeah. And this does suit his mix of, the serious and heartfelt, and then the kind of goofy, silly, like an example of the latter would be there at the end where he says, "We're gonna make the last movie ever because no one's gonna have the balls to make another." But then at the same time, like right before that, he sounded genuinely genuine, Yeah, I think yeah, let's go more or less chronological. So, yeah, they arrive at Von Kovac, and yeah, this thing of, yeah, as Trevor points out, they both sound kind of forced, and then he's like, oh, we could plan something spontaneous, and Trevor points out, but then it would be inauthentic, and this again, like, they really are nailing, like, these are things I've heard professional actors struggle with, you want to make an impression, but you also have to be real. And yeah, I also felt like this was this might be my favorite. It's certainly near the top of these kinds of let's have some fun with, the silliness, which is a very real thing of these kinds of exercises. There's, yeah, I don't know. I could give examples, but it feels like kicking down at stuff that nobody else still actually cares about. But there's other examples where it's just like, that wasn't that funny. I get where you're coming from, but you need better material and possibly even performances. But here it really worked. And yeah, the thing about, so they arrive, right, and yeah, Trevor continues to try to help Simon be not so much, way too much in his head, the... Yeah, and yeah, I like that, Simon does point out, technically, it was Trevor's fault that they ended up in this situation. He wanted to go home and sleep, and because of Trevor, yeah, little if any sleep, and this whole, yeah, the situation with the dealer and his goons, cronies, buttonmen, and and Trevor saying, well, you got a good story out of it, which, like, I mean, that is kind of how Trevor handles all of this. I think it was Richard who asks, how, and yeah, it all becomes like fun anecdotes he can share with others. And yeah, the thing about, there's only one pair of shoes out here. That's weird. If it was a no shoes home, there'd be a line of shoes. If it was a shoes on home, there would be no shoes, and yeah, like, genuinely, I don't know. I think in some ways I'm more like Simon than, I'm working on not obsessing over things, but I was also thinking, like, that's why just one pair, and yeah, the right, the thing, let's not give him any weird energy to pick up on. But Kovac will see you now. Amazing! Just like, okay, Simon, take it down a notch, please. And yeah, the thing about, is she wearing shoes? I don't know. I can't see. And they make a point to have the camera show, like, yeah, genuinely, you cannot see her feet. Reportedly, Quentin Tarantino cried when he saw that scene. And then the camera reveals, both of them did end up taking their shoes off. And then they get in. It's like, oh, crap. All of us are being called back at the same time. The rest of them are wearing shoes. I bet they had sleep less. Just, yeah. And, the guy that's like, oh, I don't know, this kid's like, I don't know, 16, probably in his 20s or something. But just like, oh, this thing of like, how are you this successful at your age, which is not exclusive to actors. That's like a lot of different fields. But he's talking about how like, oh, I went to Juilliard. I graduated from Yardale. I just wrapped a Chris Nolan film. Do you have to call him Chris? Could you at least just call him Christopher Nolan? Sir Christopher Nolan. Like the rest of us mere mortals. Like, he's so familiar, and it's, And then the other guy was like, just school life for me. I mean, I'm the surf instructor for Paul Thomas Anderson. Then one day he was like, you should be in my movie, and the calls have not stopped since. Yeah, maybe if you got a more traditional education, you'd know how to pick up sarcasm. And let's see. And that's also, nepotism. I really appreciate them. Once again, screw Disney. I'm not, they are obviously just trying to woke wash. I'm not forgetting all the horrible things they've done to people, including their own employees. But I do appreciate, nepotism is definitely something that needs to be called out. And the one guy who, I'm just real quick gonna double check if the Manuel is played by an actor called Carlos Leal. I just don't want to make fun of the name if that is his real name, but no, that not only is it not his real name, but his real name is apparently he only has 2 names instead of, I don't know, what was it, like 5 or something, which is also a funny joke. It's one of those things, it's not like racist. It's, it's heading in a little bit of that direction, but not going so far that it's offensive, And the let's see. I don't think I really have anything to say about Richard. I think that covers all of them. Yeah, the let's see. Then we have the so Von Kovac, it was really great how he invites them in to where he's doing all this pre-production. He's got the all these like what are those called again? Artistic rendering kind of works in progress kind of thing on the wall, and then one of them's of Manuel. Oh, you snuck into my subconscious, and it's like, okay, we get it. Simon's probably not going to get the role. And then he starts playing music, and it is genuinely set. Like, I've heard of similar things, done by, directors and such. So it is a genuinely fun kind of, I'm not sure I really remember the names of who did it, but yeah. Definitely getting at least some like Kubrick vibe off Von Kovac. Maybe some Lars von Trier as well. This kind of, well, let's see. I guess we're not supposed to call them weird when they're powerful. Eccentric, that's it. And yeah, he starts playing the music, and they're like moving to the music because they're like, I mean, we got to do something to make an impression. I don't know what, so yeah. And then Trevor starts imitating a trombone, and Kovac is like, interesting. And the let's see, I think it's again this thing of like, by the end of the episode they do both have the job, so it's it's this thing of like making it seem like, oh, this is just falling apart completely, and I continue to really appreciate about the character of Trevor Slattery. Maybe I've forgotten at least one of them, but, again, rewatched both of the movies recently. Keep meaning to, but forgetting to watch the one shot again. as far as I recall, every single joke so far, maybe it changes in the last 2 episodes of this, but the jokes involving Trevor Slattery come from the character. They're not doing something that is inconsistent with the character just to get a laugh. Like, you might not like the character. You might think that they're doing the same types of jokes too much. You're entitled to your opinion. But I would argue that they really are, like, yeah, he is this, like, he makes weird choices sometimes, he just, yeah. Oh, right, I don't know how I forgot. I did really like the opening, yeah. Okay, so at this point, I would almost be surprised if the last 2 episodes do not also open with a flashback. But yeah, it was cool to see the casting for the Mandarin, and how he gradually finds the voice, and he's given the sunglasses and that whole thing. And this thing of like, oh, this isn't the audition, you wanted something more adult. You should be very, very relieved that this was not a real audition, or not an audition for, like, a movie, TV show, or stage play, because I'm pretty sure that would have been you talking your way right out of working with them. But yeah, and it cuts to him in the car, and Simon's like, well, you zoned out, because that's where his head's at. He is still trying to struggle. He's still struggling, trying to get over it. Later he tells Richard, oh, I don't even remember it, which is a classic kind of, like, that's what a lot of people say when they don't want to talk about their pain. It's meant to shut down the conversation, because, like, if they don't remember it, like, you want to be a jerk and be like, oh, well, I remember it. Let me tell you all about this horrible thing that you don't even remember. Like, I don't know, some people might do that. In a lot of cases, you probably shouldn't. Like, obviously, if the person you're talking to is, like, former addict trying to make amends, then it might be, but anyway, yeah, one of the first things to go wrong is that Simon and Trevor are paired up with other people, not each other. And let's see, yeah, and so it really is great how, yeah, like, as I think it is Simon who says, absolutely natural, like, such a great performance, like, if this wasn't Simon's show, if this had been the first episode, I would almost be thinking, oh wow, I could certainly understand if I'm afraid I forget their names, but if these other two end up winning these roles, and yeah, right after he says, oh, that was amazing, Simon is like, that was amazing, then Von Kovic is like, oh, this is all wrong, and is like, well, if that was wrong, I don't know if anything's going to be right. Oh, wait, does this mean Simon's back in the running, maybe? Very nicely done on that. And yeah, and so, throw the script away, which, like, immediately, oh no, like, that's going to be a huge, we know that's going to be a huge problem, as it proves to be for Simon, and one of them, like, tearing the script up with glee. That was genuinely funny. And also, like, he's not sure what before he's told, throw away the script, and it's not you that there's something wrong with. When Von Kovic just says, no, there's definitely something wrong here. He's, like, looking through the script pages, because he's like, he has to do something, and it's like, I mean, what is he expecting to find in there? He wasn't asked, hey, can you go to another page? And it's just, yeah. But the he can't just, like, I mean, he probably wants to say, what did we do wrong, And yeah, the improvisation is also quite fun. And yeah, those first two do a really great job. And let's see, right now I forget, well, were the first two maybe Trevor and the almost literal child? I forget. I'll while I'm trying to think of it, I'll just briefly mention fairly recently Nando Cut, or was it Nando V Movies? I can never remember which channel is posting what. He did a spoiler-free review of the show, and yeah, really, really solid video. Anyway, yeah, and Trevor, at first it's like, is he gonna say anything? And then he starts saying no, and he just says no over and over, and it really works, because he's not overthinking it. Because, like, yeah, at the end of the day, he 100% understood. That's the thing. Like, Trevor, when it comes to acting, he's amazing. He really, really gets it. This is the kind of thing where, yeah, one of the two people in this relationship is talking a lot and saying, we have to end this, and the other one just needs to remind them, no, you don't actually want to end things, and yeah. I think that brings us to, yeah, and the thing about, okay, so the entire house, you can go anywhere you want to, yeah, to act, which does, of course, give them more freedom, which is extremely beneficial for actors working on this, yeah. And I think that does, because yeah, one of them is walking away. There's that thing about leave. If you don't leave, I will go. And then he starts walking away, and Trevor follows, and so they can have a conversation, but they also have this dynamic element that they are moving. It's more interesting that way. I think the next thing was the part with Simon and Richard, I think, maybe oh wait, Manuel, crap, I forget. Yeah, I think it was Manuel. Anyway, Simon and his scene partner, and the thing about, like, okay, they get their characters, and yeah, like 3 words into Simon's line, I was like, Pretty Woman. Which, like, yeah, because that's the thing. He memorizes these things, and he struggles to just be himself, and then he's smashing glass plates. It's just, yeah, and like everyone, like Ron Kovac is like, he doesn't even seem to mind, which also, fair enough. I mean, he probably has more than enough money to replace it, and he did tell them, you can do anything, use the house to, but the others are like, not only did you just lose this job, you are going to have to pay for that. You might get sued. And yeah, at the end of it, even though Von Kovac has been so complimentary up to this point, suddenly he's like, I'm disappointed. And let's see, yeah, and so they take a break because he has to answer the phone, and I have never watched Chaka Khan, but I have heard, what Trevor says about, like, she's such an amazing performer. Yeah, and very cool. Once again, this, the they make a reference to a pop culture song or singer, and then it's like, yeah, an actual, let's see, a song about Chaka Khan, not by. I think that brings us to the, yeah, right, and Trevor, kind of snaps at Richard. There's the thing about, oh, I still can't get over playing the, which I don't know that role, but obviously he wasn't, helping a terrorist playing that, so, and Trevor's like, yeah, okay, I didn't know you were so fragile. Which also afterwards, Richard is like using that same line about Simon, because he's like trying to, he doesn't like that he was, put down like that. And yeah, the nightmare is one of those very, very telling things, and I appreciate, like, until right the moment that he woke up, I genuinely was not sure if this was indeed a nightmare, But yeah, they get another scene, and Simon is trying, but Richard, yeah, he's saying all the things that Simon is terrified are true. Everybody knows, they think of him as a freak. They are talking about him behind his back. Just, yeah. And when Richard puts the phone down, so it's completely clear, because like at first I was thinking like, oh, this is just how he's playing the role, but it's, unironically using the term, it's triggering Simon's anxiety. But no, yeah, it was a nightmare, and really cool that he puts his hand through Richard's face. And yeah, I'm sitting there thinking about like, well, we're not seeing him wake up, several seconds after that. We're not seeing him wake up. So I'm thinking, is he a robot or an alien or something? Like, why is his, because like, I mean, he seemed to have died from it, but the way his head broke, it did not look completely real, obviously, because, yeah, then, anyway. I think that brings us to, yeah, and so, he's woken up, and Kovac says, are we boring you? And, yeah, he takes a minute, and, Trevor again tells him, you are not your condition, you are your experiences, And, yeah, perhaps appropriate for Black History Month. That is something I've heard, Black leftists talk about, struggling with, separating, to be clear, I'm not saying that being Black is a condition. I'm just saying there are a number of white supremacists who treat it as such. And yeah, again, the show is more relevant than I think it might have been meaning to be, because, yeah, ICE very much carrying out white supremacist agenda right now. I think that does, yeah, and by the end, Trevor has talked him into it, and they're quoting the lines of Barnaby and Wonder Man, and then, they're finishing the scene there in front of Kovac, and genuinely, like, they really do nail it. Like, I want to watch the Wonder Man movie if yeah. I think that does bring us, yeah, and Kovac is like, I don't know, and they're, seemingly sent home. And I really appreciate the way they're standing there, and again, like, so I appreciate this episode was not directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, but his visual language, as seen very much in Shang-Chi, the movie, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, it does very much inform this as well. And yeah, like, I know I'm not the only person who immediately noticed Von Kovacs is sitting behind them. Like, he's out of focus, and he's not moving very much, but that's clearly him. Like, they're very careful to make sure. And I'm sitting there thinking, I really hope they don't say something really insulting about, like, if one of them says, forget Kovac, what was the last good movie he made? Has he made even one? People talk about how amazing he is, but it's just, But yeah, and they're starting to leave, and he's like, where are you going? I don't know, Kovac. Where do you think they're going? If you had to take a guess, take a wild guess, take a shot in the dark. And yeah, he explains, he definitely is casting them. He just didn't want to say it in front of the others. And I think, yeah, I really like the line about, I call it my prison of opulence, because it is everything I love and hate about Hollywood. So yeah, there are definitely directors who talk like that. And I think that brings us all the way to, right, also the part where, yeah, Simon is, starting to pick up the stuff he broke on the floor. And at first, Trevor is helping him, and then Simon snaps at him about how, he has another scene partner. That wasn't his choice, though. Like, I guess maybe Simon wanted him to fight harder, since Simon did start to say that, but it's, like he needs to prove himself, and he has abandonment issues. It's very, very clear, and they're doing such a good job with it on the show so far. And yeah, so Simon leaves, and then the car shows up for Trevor, and I love that he immediately picks up on it, but it's like, well, if I run, they're definitely going to chase me. Maybe they didn't see me yet. Of course he would think that. And it's like, they know where you live. Of course they do. That's like, if the government doesn't like you, they know where you live or will find out as soon as they can. Like, that's just, a really messed up fact about living in America today. Anyway, again, it's this thing of like, I can't tell if Trevor is betraying Simon. Like, obviously he doesn't want to be in jail, but is he actually going to give anything? Because like there was some disagreement in this episode, or and I did really appreciate that he had the dignity to walk away when Simon snapped at him over something that wasn't really his fault. So it's like, okay, you pick up your own broken glass then. But yeah, is it because he thinks he can protect Simon, or is it just not wanting to go back to jail? And the thing about, because in the car, he does say, you're right, he has abilities and he's dangerous. And I love that, Cleary is like, you're willing to testify to that in court? And then Trevor points out, the word of a convicted terrorist? Yeah, people are certainly going to listen to that. No, you have to put me back, and I will get you something. Which, like, I don't know if he is. He still has not told Simon about this. And, really, really excited for the last few episodes. And I think that might cover... Let's see. Yeah, just really continue to appreciate all the things the show does well, as I've talked about in earlier videos on it. Let's see. I guess that does pretty much cover... I feel like there's one thing I'm missing. Okay, so mentally I'm real quick gonna fast forward through the episodes. Right, I definitely want to mention, really love the decision. There was, the doorman flashback episode. The Wonder Man title only appeared at the very end because that's when the reins are handed back to Simon. But up until that point, the episode is not about Wonder Man. So, the title that pops up at the start is Doorman, because this is not a Wonder Man episode. This is a One Door Man episode.